All right, as usual, get comfortable. Get comfortable and relax. Spine straight. Really just take a few minutes to be with the body and feel how it feels. You can check in with the feeling in our face, if our muscles are tight around the eyes or the jaw or anywhere. And we can invite that to relax. Relax our shoulders. Relax our arms and hands. Relax our belly. Relax our legs. Just being here, present with this body, however it feels. And if we need to adjust our posture a little bit to feel comfortable, knowing that we're going to be in this position for about 30 minutes. This is the time to do that. If we take a bit of time to settle into our posture, that can really help the mind settle too when we're ready. And then we establish mindfulness. And notice how the body and mind respond even when we hear those words of establishing mindfulness, that intention to be present and aware. And even though we may have done this thousands of times, hundreds of times, tens of times, or however often or frequently or how many times we've done this before, this is the one that matters right now. And we start fresh. And we turn our attention to our meditation object. For me, that's the breath. Aware of the in-breath and aware of the out-breath. We can observe our breath and also our whole body. Inviting another layer of calm, deepening a bit more. Just really relaxing and feeling the whole body and each in breath and each out breath. And as the body becomes more calm and the mind begins to settle down, we might notice some pleasant feelings arising. The Buddha suggested that we really tune into those pleasant feelings and encourage them. A feeling of happiness or joy that comes from becoming calm, becoming secluded from those external inputs that we're usually so engaged in. And some of the sounds in this environment might actually help to lift the heart, bring more happiness. The birds, the rushing stream. But our attention is fundamentally on our meditation object. We use that to help to calm the mind. Dropping into deeper states of peace and clarity.
chant the traditional invocation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. It's good to be here, to see so many people tuning in online, and the Ayya's had a good idea to talk about, to take a theme for the morning to be diversity, and we've been discussing that in correspondence over the last week, and the Ayya's recommended a particular sutta, the Vaseta Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya number 98. And it has a lot of interesting things to say about diversity in a Buddhist context. And I thought it would be just interesting to look at, what did the Buddha say about diversity? What did the Buddha say about discrimination? Is there a place for being discerning or looking for distinctions among different types of people? And then what does it look like internally? So what's the internal aspect of diversity? So first, looking at discrimination, or particularly this Vaseta Sutta. And the Buddha begins by talking about distinctions. There are these two Brahmin students who are having this discussion, and one of them says that you can see distinctions among people based on their birth, so based on what caste they were born into. And then another Brahmin student says, no, you see distinctions among people based on their virtue. And they're kind of going back and forth about this, and they say, oh, the Buddha, was someone who was both born into a good family, and he is someone who's reported to be wise. So let's go and hear his take on this. And so they come to the Buddha, and each of them makes their case. And then the Buddha gives his perspective, and he starts out on a larger perspective, just looking at not just humanity, so not just possible differences among humans, but actually going into the animal realm, so the realm of nature. And he says, so you look at aquatic life, you look at fish, and there are different species of fish. Fish can be distinguished by different species based on different characteristics. Some of them have a certain number of fins, other of them don't. You look, and that's how you judge distinctions between certain types of animals. Fish from different types of fish. Amphibians have these characteristics. Mammals have these characteristics. Reptiles, etc. There are different species. But then he comes to humans, and he says, within the class of humans, within species, you don't have such distinctions. It doesn't make sense to make distinct lines, to draw distinct lines among classes of humans or castes of humans, or to judge people by, he actually does mention sexual orientation, the Pali word for sexual orientation, metuna, or by gender identity. It doesn't make sense to be discriminatory in that way. But then he does point to differences in terms of virtue. Like there are people who keep precepts and who do live moral lives and who have trained the mind in keeping precepts. And he said that that's where it does make sense to look out as you're choosing the people who you're going to to be around, choosing the people who you want to associate with. It's unintelligent, and it's not a wise thing to make distinctions based on race or gender or ethnicity, any of these things which have been so prominent in the course of human history that people have made such a big deal about. But it does make sense to choose your friends based on similarity of beautiful qualities of mind. And as we mentioned, some of that does include strength of inner discipline. A lot of that's, you want to associate with generous people, you want to associate with moral people, you want to associate with people who are learned in the teachings that you want to grow in. And why is that? It's because we become like the people who we associate with. We grow in the types of qualities that we see around us, in those inner virtues that we associate with. The things that we often think about, that becomes the inclination of our own minds. So if we're inside of a society, if we associate with groups, whether it's in person or whether it's online, whether it's listening to talks or the groups that we have discussions with, that's the things that we start thinking about, and the things we start caring about. And the Buddha, in a Theravada context, it makes sense, to draw near to beautiful things, especially beautiful qualities of mind. So with that in mind, how do you then relate to different types of people, whether it's maybe people who you don't want to associate with, or even in the people, regarding people who you, or groups who you might want to associate with and draw near towards. There are a diversity of types of people in that, different diversities of personality types. And it's not necessarily the case that even in a Buddhist group, even in a Theravada group, even in a American Theravada group, that we're going to necessarily get along with everybody who we meet in these different contexts. And so how do you relate to that? And an interesting principle in that regard is a Thai concept, which is actually borrowed from Pali. And the concept in Thai is called Nana Cetang, which comes from the Pali. Nana, which means diversity or variety or difference. And Cetang is the Pali for mind. So variety of minds. And it's almost a maxim, even. Just, it's a short word. In Pali, it's just one word. But in Thai context, it's a whole, you could say it's even a whole mindset. But what it means, this diversity of mind, you say it when you want to say, to each their own. Nana Cetang, it means to each their own. So, and really this is a virtue in both linguistically in Thai, but also culturally in Thai. There's more of an allowance for different types of people, variety of views. There's not such a primacy based on everyone having to agree with you in all aspects. There's more of an allowance for varieties of character, varieties of personality, and it's really a beautiful thing to come into a culture or a group that allows for a variety of perspective and that doesn't insist on uniformity of thought in all respects. You see this in Thai monasteries, whether they're in America or in Thailand. I was really fortunate to ordain in a very good Thai-influenced American monastery, Abhayagiri. And although everyone that comes there is, somewhat interested in a Theravada perspective, even a Thai Theravada perspective, the characters that come through there, I mean, you get a lot of types of people coming to a monastery. It's not necessarily the case that everybody's going to be a quiet introvert. And, you learn that even within this subset of people, like everyone who's on this call, everyone who's in here in person right now, we all have a lot of shared interests, but we all have other interests that we don't have in common. We share a lot of the same Venn diagrams, but there's all sorts of other aspects of our characters and might rub up against one another. Some of us talk fast, some of us talk slow, some of us like Burmese flavor of Buddhism, some of us like the lay flavor of Buddhism, or the mastic flavor, or the Thai, or the insight variety, or tranquility variety. But what this mindset of nana chittang, of to each their own, really internalizing that and being able to look at the shared qualities that we have and really making a lot of that, and not necessarily focusing on those things which we find annoying about other people. And it's a beautiful concept. And I think the concept as it's used in linguistically in modern Thai, comes from a perspective inherent in Pali Buddhism, is this acceptance of different mind states. Yeah. We're not we're not always going to be faced with the wonderful and enlightened mind states that we want, and this is something which we really have to accept about ourselves, and it's something which you have to learn in meditation, is that we have this nana chittang. Each of us has a plurality of mind states. We have a plurality of physical states. We have a plurality of sensations. It's cold here right now. And yeah, part of the Buddhist training is to gain the strength of mind that allows us to be able to face, with a smile, all of this variety and the rainbow of experiences that we encounter. And all of that, whether it's the physical body, or whether it's the pleasant or unpleasant or neutral feelings that we have, or the pleasant or unpleasant or beautiful or ugly or wholesome or unwholesome mind states that we experience, just being able to accept all of that in a very spacious and an open and accepting manner, because really we don't have, on one level, we don't really have a choice on one level. Yeah. The four satipatthanas, the four bases of mindfulness, the four foundations of mindfulness are body. We look at the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress for the world. Feelings, pleasant, painful, or neutral, we look at them with a sense of energy, with awareness, with clarity, putting aside our likes and dislikes with relations to the feelings that we experience. And mind states, whether it's greed or lack of greed, or hatred or lack of hatred, or delusion, lack of delusion, inner release, or a sense of constrictedness, a sense of expansiveness, or a sense of contractedness. These things come and go, and there's an awareness which is bigger than all of these individual differences. And that's really what we want to be becoming more and more familiar with. And there really is a beautiful synchronicity and consilience with our ability to accept the people around us, the environments around us, the temperatures around us, and our own inner ability to accept the storms and mind states and weather patterns that come through the mind. And the more we're able to say, okay, we're really fortunate to have this group of people online and in person. We've got enough in common to really rejoice in that, and all the differences and the annoying idiosyncrasies that we each have and kind of rub up against each other. That is what it is. And this is a safe environment. It's not 1,000% safe, but it's safe enough, to say, I'm grateful for this community and this group of people externally, and I can let my guard down to that extent. And similarly, internally, I'm sitting down to meditate. I'm sitting down to be quiet with myself, and I'm not killing anyone. I'm not stealing anything from anybody. It's safe enough. The mind states which I'm experiencing while I sit down, although they might not always be as Jhanic as I might wish, they're safe enough. They're within the realm of acceptability that I can say, okay, expansive, I accept this, and I can train here. And yeah, those are just some thoughts. I don't know if that's, yeah, and
Thank
pass
you
it
so
on to
much, talking about those introverts. Like,
We just turned the microphone to the introvert of the group, for sure.
yeah, I really appreciate what Ajahn said. I think so much of the diversity issue, like there's so much sort of like influenced by our perceptions and identification, and kind of all this me stuff kind of puts up barriers. And it's nice to kind of step back from that and watch your mind, like what is it doing exactly when it's this us versus them mentality, or me versus them mentality. My ideas are better, or I identify as like a liberal or conservative or Wasian, whatever it is that kind of highlights the differences, is a good place to look at where your sense of self is and what it's doing. And that's all the introvert has to say. I'm not clinging too hard to that identity. Really.
One of the things I was thinking about in thinking about diversity is how lucky we've been at KBV to have a very diverse community, really for many years now. And I think you might have heard me say this before, I'm not sure, but when we were in Mountain View, which was the bulk of our existence in the 10 years we've been in existence, we'd have people from so many different backgrounds come to the Vihara, and people across the whole adult age spectrum, people with all different kinds of identifications of gender and sexual orientation. And it's been so rich and wonderful. I mean, sometimes we don't want diversity. We want to be with people who think like we do, or have shared experiences with us. And other times it's just so wonderful to be among people who have different life experiences and see things in different ways. And I think for me, the main thing about this is learning where my blind spots are, because you get raised in a certain way, you have a certain sort of set of kind of environmental conditions, or a certain body or a certain gender or a certain whatever, and you get treated in certain ways in our culture, and you don't realize what it's like unless you really listen to someone else to know what it's been like for them, what they experience. And I feel like that's a huge gift, because those blind spots are part of delusion. And we want to eradicate greed, hatred, and delusion. That's one of the shared beautiful things about everybody coming to KBV. At some level, we want to be free of suffering. Of course, that really does cover all of living beings. We want to be rid of suffering, but this particular way of going about that, following the Buddha's teachings, is something we share, certainly, in this community. And part of that suffering is based on delusion. There's greed and there's hatred, and those are a lot easier to see when they arise in us. And it's the delusion that's tricky a lot of times. Doesn't mean it's easy to let go of those aversive mental states or those grasping mental states that want something, but delusion, how do you break through delusion? People have asked that question so many times. Well, one part of it is to really listen to other people. What do they see? What do they experience? What are they sharing? How can I understand that? How can I see that I'm treated differently than someone else might be treated, better or worse, depending upon those very quote unquote distinctions that the Buddha said don't matter. But as human beings, we keep doing this everywhere. There's some kind of racism, there's some kind of classism, there's some kind of gender discrimination, and even all the junk that has gotten woven into Buddhist teachings that don't belong there, that didn't come from the Buddha. We go back to the Buddha's actual words, and it's just not the case that some of the things I'm thinking of are things that people have said about women. In some Buddhist traditions, they say that women can't get enlightened. Well, that's not what the Buddha thought, and of course we don't believe that either. And what if you don't identify as a woman, even though you have sort of like those female parts? Who cares? I mean, we care to respect people, that we care about, to have that safe space, have that acceptance. I love that nanachitang. It's like to have that acceptance of one another. And we've had people with all different kinds of views about vaccines and all different kinds of views about politics. And, it's like, how can we understand where people are coming from and bring it into that context of those qualities that the Buddha said do matter? And those are our choice, which is the big distinction, I think. You get born with certain conditions. We don't choose that. And many of them we can't change. But when we think about those qualities that the Buddha talked about in the Vasita Sutta that make a difference, those are choices. You choose not to kill living beings. You choose not to take what isn't given, and so on like that. You choose to develop the mind. And even though we can't make insight happen, if we could all say, okay, I want to be enlightened now, and we could choose that, we would be doing it. Or maybe would we? This is a good question. I don't know, we're pretty interested in the world and all the stuff that we probably would lose interest in if we did that. But I want to encourage in that direction. But of course, what we can do is choose to put in the causes and conditions for insight to occur, for awakening to occur. And that's a pretty long list of things that we have choices over. It all comes back, though, to what we say and what we do and what we choose to think. And like I said, when there's delusion present, like being born white and female gives me certain advantages in the world and certain disadvantages in the world. And if I want to know what it's like to be born Black, Asian, whatever, you know what Asian is? white and Asian.
White and half Asian, so I'm Asian.
My whole family is Asian, really. I've got the white ones and the Asian ones, and then we've got the mixed ones. And it's a hugely wonderful way to understand the different experiences we have in the world, and that the way I experience things or the way I'm treated isn't the way everybody's treated. Whether that's, for better or worse, what can we do to change that? To stand up for that respect for human beings' good qualities, like that Nana Chitan, focusing on the beautiful qualities we have for ourselves internally and externally, so that we really do accept each other and care about each other. That we really do accept ourselves and forgive ourselves and forgive others. And then, it's not about saying, oh yeah, it's all okay. Those behaviors that human beings have that put other people down, that make their lives miserable, that's not okay. What's okay is having differences in the way we experience life and sharing that and helping each other see our blind spots. That delusion is a barrier to our awakening. And we can do this if we do it together.
Can we say sadhu?
Yeah, sadhu. So, I'm always more interested in hearing what other people have to say than hearing what I have to say, because I live here and there. And it's been really nice to have both of you talk today. And what do you think? What did we leave out? What did we get wrong? What do you want to, what questions or experiences do you have that would help this, not just this topic, but anything you want to talk about? Feel free. Anything? Yes, Grace.
Hi, it's so nice to see you both, first of all. And I guess I had a question, or I want to hear more about that fine line, because sometimes we're in community with people who are really well-intentioned and they're good people, and there's just this grind in the way that we interact. So can you just say more about knowing when to stay in that community and when to remove yourself?
Hey, I think you get a choice, Grace. Like, do you want to direct who you want to answer the question to? Or maybe who first answer the question?
Sure. Cittananda, I'd love to hear from you.
Oops. Yeah, I mean, it does take some wisdom and discernment to know when, staying the course is worth it and when it's not, I think. it's kind of a judgment call. You can try different things. I know you're very skillful in your relations with people. So when you've exhausted your kind of toolbox of ways to relate that could help the situation, help kind of change the interactions or the sort of maybe mindset of different people and your own, of course. I know you're very good at that too, looking at what your mind is doing and kind of working with that. So sometimes it is time to go. I mean, it depends on the relationships. If it's family, it's a little different. If it's work relations, if it's a group of friends. So I think it's just kind of when you know you've done your best to try to, change things and work with your own mind, then it's just time to go maybe. So it's okay. That probably doesn't help any, sorry. Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I think you said it really well. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I usually throw in, I mean, you were answering Grace's question, which is, like, yeah, that was, but I usually, because of my own history, I usually throw in, if you're in physical danger, leave. Just in case that's happening. And if you're in emotional, financial, or sexual danger, then also leave. And it's just, yeah, hopefully we don't encounter too much of that in our lives, but if we do, it's okay to go. And sometimes the message is you need more metta. No, not in those cases. It's really time to leave. Denny?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is way better than TV. This is,
Oh, good.
I have this resistance to sitting still, of just being with myself right now, and but after, there's something about community, about just seeing all these faces that that lifts me up, and if I were to try to meditate on my own, I just I just can't do it very long, and but today it was like that time went by so quickly, and it's just I guess I just have this feeling like I need to do this on my own or something, or like I should be better at meditating every day, and I just want to acknowledge that I need this. This is just to sit and know that everyone else is sitting as well. It's so thank you for being here, and thank you, all of you, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It's wonderful. I feel the same way, and I think that's a really common experience. I mean, you have the Buddha talked about the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Even if you have a great teacher and you've got great teachings, there is, the magic of Sangha, of having a community. And I felt it this morning, and that's very often the case for myself as well. And in addition to that, I mean, it helps to be in nature. That's something else which is very supportive. But yeah, having people, it's almost always easier, certainly for longer periods of sittings. If you're going to start pushing yourself to sit more sits than you do usually, or to sit longer than you're going to sit usually, community helps so much. And the underlying point that you made first of just, it sucks that we can't just sit still. Like, why can't I just be totally happy just sitting by myself? It's disappointing, for it would be so nice to be able to do that all the time, and it helps to have community to practice.
Yeah. Thank you. it's also different in different times and phases of our life and experiences we have. There are times when it's just really understandably hard to sit down and be still by ourselves. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how it is. And it's so great to have you join us. And you can tell we have a pretty small community here on Saturday mornings, and it's just lovely to be together and have this time. So thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I found Grace's question very interesting, and it's something I've, so many of the lists include, of what to do, include association with the wise. That's a big recommendation. And I think we're all kind of someplace on the continuum of wise. And so we're always looking, so I guess it's looking for to spend part of our time looking for those wiser than us, and part of our time being wiser for the people that need it from us. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I've got situations like that where being with people that are just kind of toxic, and don't want to spend too much time there, but you can be of some benefit perhaps as well. So it is a tricky question, interesting one.
Yeah, there's this one place, maybe more places, but the Buddha said, look, this idea of being with people wiser than ourselves, they may have different qualities that they really excel in. So one aspect of this is, he said, look for people who are really strong in generosity. If you see someone in your life is really, really beautifully generous. And I've seen this even with people who don't keep 5 precepts, for example. They might be incredibly generous. And he said, if you see someone like that in your life, then emulate that. If they're more generous than you are, they're, then emulate that part. And if someone is more virtuous, then emulate that. Find them, look to them as an example for that bit. And he talks the same way about wisdom, and he talks the same way about faith. And so we can, maybe see those things. We may be an inspiration to one of those types in a different way. And also what you said about, it's not like we never associate with people who are wiser than we are necessarily, but it is good to notice, sort of like Grace's question, where's the cutoff? I really appreciate how in Thailand, you can tell me if I've got this right, Ajahn, keeping the 5 precepts is actually the designation as to whether or not you're really a fully human being. And you think about it, like not keeping the precepts is kind of like more down in the animal behavior, it's like in human beings, that's kind of a baseline. And yet we might associate with people who don't keep the 5 precepts fully. Maybe they got 4.5, maybe they got 3.5, who knows? But, you try to recognize, well, I'm certainly not going to follow that kind of, standard that really creates trouble in our life. What did you want to say, Ajahn?
Yeah, no, that was really beautiful. I was having similar thoughts, and yeah, I mean, not everybody keeps the precepts. My dad says he tries to keep 1 precept a day. So you do what you can do. The more the better. Yeah, but I think what you're pointing to, like this the ability to see the good in other people, to the ability to see the genius in other people. Like it's not just one wisdom spectrum, you know, it's like multiple, you know, there's the faith spectrum and there's the generosity spectrum, and, you know, the ability to be able to look and see that in other people and be like, okay, maybe their speech isn't so good. Maybe they're like, they backbite, you know, or they like they gossip. Yeah. And that is unfortunate for them, but maybe they're extremely generous, or maybe they can be really kind when they can be kind. And just honing in on that and exactly like associating with that part of them and really drawing it out, talking about that kind of thing with them. And yeah, I think that's a really useful kind of like meta skill to have, is and wanting to have that and wanting to be able to appreciate people where they're at. Very important.
It makes me
Go ahead.
It makes me think about, I was thinking about this earlier around diversity. It's like in the Vinaya, there's a part where there's I think he's fully enlightened. He's a monk and he's like, how can I serve the Sangha? He's like, oh, I'll allocate lodgings or something. And one other thing, I can't remember, meals, I think. And the Buddha's like, yes, you should do that, but do that. So he's picking out, okay, the bodybuilder monks live over here and the kind of gossipy ones live over there. And that, you know, he's like talking about different like types of people who get along together and like would live together well or something. And it's interesting. We were talking like the Buddha didn't say, oh, those are not good enough to be monks, you know, they gossip too much, or they're too into their bodies or too worldly. It's like people may have those qualities, but there's still a chance for enlightenment. Maybe they use those qualities to see where their faults are, and they have the support of other people around in the Sangha who aren't like them to look at and to have a good example in their elders and other monks' good qualities that they can pick up on and sort of maybe rub out the bad ones. And if they're all working on the same thing, hopefully their gossip problem, they can help check each other, their bodybuilding, being into their bodies. Maybe they can point out to each other, hey, we're doing that again, we got to stop. You know, so it's good. Community helps.
Yeah, sometimes I enlist her to stop me when I go on this track.
Bodybuilding?
Hey, I used to go to Gold's 5 times a week. That is true. This is better. Yes, Anne.
So one of the challenges I've had is of people of different faiths. And so my sister is a conservative Christian, and I don't see her that often, but it was coming from her that I was going to hell. I mean, that was the message in many ways that I was getting, not many ways, but it was there. So I had a conversation with her one day and I said, you know, I am Buddhist, and that's my faith and that's my life. And I want to say that I will respect your faith, and I request that you respect my faith. And the other thing I said, which was important to her, I said, you know, and if there's somewhere where we're going afterwards, I'll see you there, which she may or may not have believed, but I felt it bridged a gap for me back to her, so that I didn't hold my attitudes about her, and she may hold her attitudes about me, but that's up to her. So I don't know if other people have had those kind of experiences, but that's one of the places where diversity was really, you know, a thorn in my side, and understanding that relationship. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. When we get better at this hybrid thing, we're going to have a monitor on the other side that everybody can see. And thank you, Anne. That was nice, helpful. Lillian?
Thank you on this talk on diversity. It's very timely because lately I've been isolating myself from my Kalyana Mittas, because I found, and they are Buddhist practitioners, maybe different types of Buddhism, but I found that my recent engagement with them, some of them tend to have very fixed views, and they seem to think that their views is correct, and they come down really hard on me. And they kind of use these views to like judge me as a person. And when I do have these encounters, I tell myself, like, don't react, don't create more selfing out of this. Like, they're just speaking out of their individual experience, you know, their perspective. Don't take it personally. So I tell myself this, and yet, you know, I walk away from the experience and I feel really hurt. I'm still like recovering from the hurt. So recently I try to isolate myself from these people, but they keep reaching out to me. They text me and they call me, and I don't know what the right way, what the wise words or the course of action I should tell them. Like, I just want some time to seclude. I just want some seclusion from them. You know, I'm still kind of healing myself from the words they said to me. And I don't know how to put it to them. I just want some time away without hurting their feelings, you know, without recirculating the hurt. So I would appreciate some feedback or advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we have to take care of our feelings and be present with, or, you know, available to how that moves through our system. I'm wondering, though, if there's a way, kind of like taking off on what Anne was talking about, I wonder if there's a way to talk to them about the differences in views and maybe where your views are coming from. And it's not like you have to answer that necessarily, but to be thinking in those terms. And certainly, I think it's really essential that people are able to listen to us, express what we need, especially when it's something so wholesome, you know, like I'm taking some time away from this for now, or maybe if it feels like you can trust this relationship or these relationships enough to really share what you're feeling. Like, this really hurts and I need a little time. You know, sometimes people are in a group that's pretty insular. And you can see this a lot in the world. You know, if we're hanging out primarily with people who think like we do, and then you keep on reinforcing that viewpoint, and you don't see, or you don't get much input from outside that circle, you get to be thinking you're pretty dead right about this. And then it can be pretty far off from kind of what other people's, you know, experience of reality is. And if that happens, and then you just try to like get people to come into your group and your way of seeing and your way of believing, without understanding that, hey, this way of believing actually doesn't cover all the bases that are true and correct, then, you know, they may not be able to recognize that what they said was really hurtful. And maybe if you told them, it would help. So it's just a thought. I mean, everybody, I think, in a situation like that has to come to their own conclusion around how they want to handle it. But those are a couple of ideas. I mean, I really think it's important that you express what you need to do and get, you know, and if people can't respect that, it may be one of those times to find a different community. Any other thoughts? Well, it's getting time to close, and we got another car arriving, getting ready for the meal and the work day. And I wish you all could be here.
We'd love to put you to work today.
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
Big bonfire.
Yeah. So we do look forward to you visiting, all of you, when you can. And thank you for being here today, everybody.